Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be creating some French country wall art from thrifted finds. I found these 3 pieces at the thrift store and thought that they would be the perfect bases for some French country wall art. After cleaning, the first thing I did was give each of these artworks 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. You can find a full product list in the description below and all these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Once my paint had completely dried, I pulled out IOD's Moulds Paint Inlay. I still haven't used the entirety of this pack. I still have these beautiful bees, so we're going to be using them on the first artwork. I'm laying down a thick coat of paint, not too thick, but also it has to be thick enough for that inlay to be able to transfer into, so you have to find that happy medium. I'm then pressing my paint inlay design side down into the wet paint. You want that grid facing up at you. I'm then going to very carefully smooth the inlay down into my wet paint. And I'm trying my hardest to get as many of the wrinkles out as possible. And then I'm using my mister to dampen the inlay. I'm then using a cloth to further minimize the wrinkles. I don't mind a few of those here and there, but any really big ones can detract from your image. And then you can also come in with a brayer to smooth it out a little bit more. I then came in with the hairdryer and sped up the drying process a little bit so that I could get some texture. While that's drying, I'm starting on my next artwork. I'm using this lovely floral design from the inlay and I'm positioning it on the center part. I am going to lose a little bit of that design off the side, but I don't think that that's going to matter overall. So I'm applying a thick coat of paint down just like the first time and then laying my inlay down, design side down. Once you do a few of these, it really becomes a lot easier. You don't even think about it. Next, just like before, I'm misting my inlay and then using a damp cloth to smooth it all out and to make great contact. If the wrinkles and the lines really bother you, I have heard it suggested that you mist your inlay first before you put it into your wet paint, so that's definitely something that you could try. For our final artwork, I pieced together a few different designs from the Moulds inlay. Here you can see I'm just working out how they're going to sit. I'm then applying a thick coat of paint, and for this one I am going to have to adjust these a little bit even as I'm applying them into the wet paint. I laid this first one down as is, pressed it into the paint. You can see I have a few wrinkles here already, a few creases, so I'm just smoothing those out. And then for the next one, I've positioned that pretty close underneath the text, again, smoothing that all out. But for the next one, I am going to have to snip off a little bit of the excess paper here so that I can have the text go in a slightly different spot. I'm just touching up the paint there, and then that way I can come in and I can add that text that I trimmed off earlier down where that little gap was, and then I'm positioning the last image down the bottom and smoothing it out. Finally, I will of course mist my design and apply some pressure. So it's very repetitive, but once you do a few, it is really easy to do these. I've let all of these dry for several hours and now I'm going to mist the inlay again. We're getting that paper nice and damp, and then I'm going to start pulling it back. You will see here that I did start to feel a little bit of resistance, so I simply put my paper back down and applied a little bit more water. After you've applied the water the first time, you want to give it about 60 seconds so that the water has time to soak in. And you can see here, I'm just pulling it back really slowly, and then once I've removed it, I will put this to one side because I will probably get another use or two out of it. To further minimize the lines left by the paint inlay, I have a damp cloth that I'm just running along my still slightly damp paint. This helps to reduce the look of the line, and I also find that using a 220 grit sandpaper very lightly also helps with the appearance of lines, again, only if this really bothers you. Once my paint was dry, I used a 50-50 mix of gloss clear coat and water, and I sprayed over the entire piece. This means that when I seal it later, I will not get any smudging, as water can reactivate your inlay. I'm repeating the same steps for my second artwork. I'm misting my inlay, leaving it for about 60 seconds, and then very carefully pulling my inlay back. I know that some people don't always seal their inlays with a spray sealer first before brushing on a sealer, but I really find that I have more success and less chance of smudging by doing this. Any spray sealer will do, really. As you can see, this was definitely a design that I had to piece together, so I am going to get a few more lines here from the different pieces that I put together. So I'm using a combination of the wet rag, and then I'm also going in with my paintbrush with my original drop cloth chalk mineral paint to touch up any of the areas that look really obviously different. It gives it a bit more of a subtle transition look. So I'm sealing that, and then once that's dry, we're going to focus on the frame. I'm mixing Dixie Belle's chocolate chalk mineral paint with the sea spray texture additive and stirring really well. This is going to thicken up my paint. It's going to give it a really wonderful texture. I'm applying it with a chip brush, and I'm actually brushing it on. I usually stipple this on, but for this, I want it to look like weathered old barnwood. And because we've thickened up our paint, our brush strokes are going to look more like wood grain. So I'm applying the sea spray mixture, and I am actually overworking the paint, because when you overwork the paint, you get more texture, more lines, and that's exactly what we want. So I've sped up the drying process, and you can see I'm going over the top of that again before it's completely dry with my brush. I'm then using some of Dixie Belle's drop cloth over the top of our dry sea spray mixture. You can see that I am lightly running my brush over the top. I don't have a whole lot of paint on there, and I'm allowing my brush to skip the texture that we created with that sea spray. So I want it to look like old barn wood that has been painted and weathered over the years. Once that's dry, I'm using Dixie Belle's burlap chalk mineral paint on our frame. Now, I am not aiming for full coverage here. I want some of that drop cloth to show through, because we're actually going to be creating a wood look frame. These are not wood frames, they're a resin, I believe. So this is our base color, and by adding the burlap and having the drop cloth there's going to be some tonal difference. When that's dry, I'm using Dixie Belle's Voodoo Gel Stain Tobacco Road. I'm pouring a small amount of it out, and then I'm using a chip brush to apply it to the frame. And you can see already that by applying those different toned paints and then adding this stain over the top, it really does create a lovely wood look. I really like how that Tobacco Road is bringing out the details in the frame. You can see that I am applying it with a brush, and then I'm also using a smaller artist brush to get into some of the other trickier areas, and I also use a paper towel to wipe back some of the excess. Once that stain is completely dry, I'm going to be sealing the frame with Dixie Belle's Clear Best Dang Wax. So I'm applying it with a brush, and then I'm going to be wiping back the excess with a paper towel. This is going to seal our stain, but it's also going to be a great base for our next step. To age and soften the look of this frame, I'm now coming in with Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in white. I'm applying it in sections, and then I'm wiping back the excess. I'm working it into all of those lovely details. And again, this is going to soften that brown and add to the vintage look that we're going for. And that clear wax that's underneath is allowing me to wipe back as much or as little as I want. If you don't have access to wax, you could definitely achieve a similar look by creating a white paint wash or using a glaze. Next, I'm going to seal the interior section of our frame with the same clear wax. I'm going to be repeating the same process on all of our artworks today. Next, I'm going to be using one of IOD's much older Labels 2 molds. I am dusting that with cornstarch, and then I'm using Jovi's air dry clay. I'm going to be using this to create some little label plates to go underneath each of our artworks. So I'm going to be casting 3 of these. And these older ones do not have the micro rim, so I definitely had to take my time a little bit more with these. I'm not sure if you can still get these anywhere, guys, but this is the Labels 2 mold if you want to type it in to Google and see if you can still grab these anywhere. It is an older mold. I let my mold dry for about an hour, and now I'm using Dixie Belle's bronze patina paint. I'm applying it very gently because my casting is still very fresh, it's still very delicate, but I wanted to paint it before I put it onto my artwork so I didn't get any of that bronze on anywhere else of our artwork. Once my paint was dry, I used Dixie Belle's whitewash glaze. I also used a mister to mist the product to get it to move a little bit easier. This is a water-based product, so I can do that. This is going to give our little plate here more of an oxidized vintage look. I then dabbed off the excess with a paper towel. I do end up going back in with one more light coat because we want to actually add a transfer soon, so I need it to be light enough to show. You can see I've used a little spatula here to move my casting. I found that a lot easier to move those wet castings with that. I'm applying some wood glue to the back of my label there, and then I'm positioning it down the bottom in the center and pressing down gently. If you don't have access to this mold, you can find a label plate that's a little bit thicker from the Olive Crest mold by IOD. The next day, I grabbed some of my offcuts from the brocante transfer. I'm not exactly sure what this script says, but I've applied it to the center, and then I'm actually just using my fingernail to burnish the design down. This was such a small area and I didn't want to damage our little plate that we created, so I just gently used my nail to rub the design down. And I'm going to repeat the same process for each of these transfers, and I will seal the transfers with some Best Dang wax in clear. And here are our finished French country artworks. I love how these turned out. That IOD Moulds inlay is absolutely beautiful, and I definitely recommend that you grab artworks from the thrift store because you can turn them into beautiful pieces for your home. Let me know if you had a favorite out of these 3 pieces. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.